Go outdoors, take your shoes off, stand barefoot on the earth, or sit on the earth, put your feet and your hands on the earth, and you will instantly notice the pain and inflammation begin to drain from your body. I got my life back is probably the most common refrain that I hear. Thank you, I got my life back. I got my life back.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to understand the science of earthing and why people say you feel better when you're connected to the earth, then do we have the Earthing Show for you. Today I'll be talking with Clint Ober, a revolutionary pioneer in the field of earthing and grounding, the co-author of a brilliant book on health called Earthing, and featured in a brilliant new documentary called The Earthing Movie. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about the science behind how and why reconnecting to the earth is so important, especially during a crisis, and why it will give you greater health, better sleep, reduced inflammation, and especially less stress for you and your kids. So welcome back to the show, Clint. Are you ready to shine?
I am, Michael. Thank you so much for having me back. I always enjoy visiting with you, and we have been doing that for years now, so it's very nice to be back.
Well, it's great to have you here. This is like a 10-year relationship. We are both on this mission to get people connected to the earth for their health. In fact, before we dive right into things, in the shortest form, how did you get so excited? You're like a kid in a candy store. How did you get so excited to go from the cable industry to I want to not ground TVs, but I want to ground people?
Well, I had retired from the cable industry 25 years ago. I'll be 76 in a few weeks. And about that time, I had a major health disorder. But anyhow, the problem was I just took time off. I gave up, because it was a near-death experience, I kind of gave up, chasing money and trying to be king of the world. And so I ended up traveling around for about 4 years in an RV, seeing my kids and just spending a lot of time in national parks or beautiful places, let's say. And so anyhow, one day I was playing with a computer and it kept crashing. And I knew that it was from static electricity because back then computers weren't grounded. And so I took and grounded the computer, or put a piece of tape across my table in front of the computer, and I would touch it before I would touch the computer. And that solved the problem. But the tape was grounded to the earth, to the electrical ground. So anyhow, shortly after that, I went outdoors and I sat on a bench, and a big old tour bus drove up, and it was a Japanese tour group. They got off the bus. They all had white Nike type tennis shoes on, and they were shorter in stature. And for some reason, my eyes were drawn to their feet. And something intuitive, it was intuitive, it wasn't something I was thinking about. So I just wondered if there's any possibility that humans no longer being naturally grounded, if it could have any effect on us. I didn't know about health, but I wasn't a health buff at that time. And I didn't know, so I started testing. So I went home that night and I bought a 3-inch wide roll of metal duct tape at the hardware store, alligator clips and some wire, and I took it home and I put it on the bed after I'd already measured the room and found that that's where most of the EMFs were. So I grounded myself. When I grounded the tape to a wire and connected it to a ground rod outdoors. Then I took another wire and connected it to a meter and connected it to a ground rod outdoors. And then when I would lay on the tape and I would touch the meter, I would see it drop to zero. So I knew I was grounded, where before it was some amount of static electricity. Pick the covers up, you got huge static electricity. Roll over in a bed, foam bed, you're creating huge static electricity, and so on. So anyhow, I didn't know, but I had a lot of sleep problems, a lot of pain. And the first night I did that, I had a voltmeter laying on my chest, and I was just kind of playing with it. And the next thing I knew, it was morning. And I said, holy cow, there's something going on here, because I don't sleep. Normally, I can't go to sleep without taking Advil or whatever. And a few days later, I grounded a couple of other people, guys that were skeptics and whatever, but in Sedona. We needed something to do. So, but anyhow, one of them had severe arthritis, and he grounded his bed and everything. And he came over a couple of days later, and he says, "Do you think this could have anything to do with arthritis?" I said, "I don't think so." He said, "Well, my arthritis is better." Then all of a sudden, I recognized my pain's better. I don't have any pain anymore like I used to, and this is like years of pain. And so then I went to work and tried to, well, how come nobody knows about this? Everybody's running to the store, running to the doc. All you got to do is do this, and the pain goes away. And so that put me off. I mean, that started me on a search from medical universities to UCLA to doing pilot studies to engaging researchers, PhDs, doctors, everybody I could over a period of 20 years to produce 20 plus peer-reviewed published studies. And we're still doing it, and I'll do it until the day I die because it's important. I mean, the thing I'm trying to figure out now is how can people who make furniture or bedding or mattresses or flooring or shoes, how can you incorporate enough carbon into your products so that they are naturally conductive, so that no matter where anybody goes, their immune system is stable? I think we have about 24 peer-reviewed published studies and another 4 or 5 in process. And what those studies really show is that when you connect the body to the earth, the body is different. I mean, when your body is not connected to the earth, it's tight and tense and charged, meaning it's positive charge. It's short of electrons, so it's positively, it has a positive charge shortage. And so as soon as you ground the body, then you have this release because your body becomes negatively charged, and it puts out the stress of the positive charged. And then the nervous system, the muscle, the muscle tone, everything changes, everything shifts. If you're mad and angry, you've got stress, you've got all these things going on in your life, whatever, go outdoors, stand barefoot on the earth for 30 minutes. You can't be mad when you're grounded. It just doesn't happen because it drains all that stress and tension out of your body. And then you can breathe, and then all of a sudden you equalize with the earth. But there's a lot more to it than the electrons. I mean, the earth has these resonant frequencies that are, and the amplitude of those frequencies increase and decrease on a 24-hour cycle. And so these resonant fields, as soon as you touch the earth, then your body starts dancing to those frequencies and rhythms, just like when you turn on a radio station and you start dancing with the music. It's a similar concept. Some music doesn't make you feel good. That's not being connected, but being connected. There's it's beautiful music in nature that our body's attuned to, and our hormones and everything. A lot of our hormone cascades. That's one of the things we learned was with cortisol.
Yes.
One of our first studies. I mean, cortisol is a stress hormone, and it's a master hormone. And so when we did our first study, we had to have some evidence of what we were looking for. And so everybody said, well, because you feel better when you're grounded, and it reduces pain and all that. So everybody said, let's measure stress. So the best way to measure stress is with cortisol. So what we did, first of all, we would go to their home and measure their cortisol every 4 hours for 24 hours. And so we set up a profile. Then we grounded them to the earth for 6 weeks. And then we went back and did the cortisol profile again every 4 hours for 24 hours. And what we found was, first of all, the cortisol, before it was like spaghetti all over the place, going up and down. Now, if you don't sleep at night, it's because your cortisol is elevated. If your cortisol is normal, then sleep is autonomic. It's like breathing. It's going to happen. But anyhow, when the study was done, we found that all of the circadian profiles, the 24-hour profiles, all synchronized into a real pretty band. The younger ladies, theirs came down because they were high anxiety. The older ladies had exhausted adrenals. Their cortisol came up, like it's 4 a.m., 6 a.m. So the significance of that and how we learn, first of all, at 4 a.m., you have a spike that comes up on cortisol. It starts spiking. and it reaches a peak around 6 a.m. That's what allows you to get out of bed and not to have a heart attack. So what we learned is what in the environment, the question we asked, first of all, what in the environment is signaling this, the body to start producing cortisol? It's not daylight, it's not sound, it's not, so the only thing it could have been, especially because it regulated it, was that the amplitude of Earth's electric field starts to rise at 4 a.m. And that's because the sun side of the Earth and the Earth's turning and a lot of other things going on. But the thing that was most fascinating, when we did this study, we had some participants in the beginning that were airline stewardesses from New York, measured their cortisol first night. It was off 3 hours from everyone else's. And so we didn't really understand it at the beginning, but because they were all stewardesses and they were all on the same crew, then as soon as we did the other one, after they'd been grounded, then they synchronized with everybody else. So then we learned that when you put your bare feet on the earth, your body resyncs with the circadian clocks, the cortisol rhythms, and all of the other hormone cascades that go on in the body. So it's very important to connect to the earth just to regulate or normalize the hormone cascades. That's when we got Stephen Sinatra involved, and he was the one who said, Clint, if you're reducing pain, you need to be studying inflammation. But this was back in 2002. And nobody used the word inflammation. It wasn't in the literature. It wasn't in the language. Now, the word inflame is an odd word because what it says, the body is on fire. Inflammation. So anybody, whenever you hear that word, and if you have any pain in your body, first of all, you can't have pain unless you have inflammation. And inflammation is caused by these neutrophils, or the immune system is trying to do what it normally does every day, every minute that we're alive. It's trying to reduce pathogens and keep the body healthy. And in the process, when there's not enough ground or not enough redox potential, then the immune system can't put the fire up, because trying to put the fire out or trying to reduce the pathogens like it normally would, it's actually creating a fire. And this fire is creating damage. And so the immune system becomes very, very compromised because it's busy trying to put out the fire that it itself is creating. So that's when we realized that, over a period of time, that, and through various studies, we learned that when you're grounded, the body becomes naturally flooded with free electron. And when your body's negatively charged, you cannot have inflammation, because the inflammation is automatic. Because then when the immune system or the neutrophil comes over and reduces a pathogen, then there's the excess free electrons from the earth that are in your body everywhere. They automatically reduce those excess radicals instantly within nanoseconds. And then there's no collateral damage, there's no fire, there's no inflammation. So it's very, very simple. You cannot have inflammation in a grounded body.
Woohoo!
And to validate that a little bit, look at the animal world. The animals who live in nature, like the coyote, the wolf, the deer, the antelope, all the animals that live out there, they don't experience cancer. They don't have cardiovascular disease, MS, lupus. They don't have any of these chronic modern lifestyle health disorders that we have. But they're outdoors living in nature. Now, the animals who live indoors with their owners, they manifest the same health disorders as their owners, and 50% of them die from cancer. Cancer is an inflammation-related health disorder.
So let's go from there. And
okay.
I want to talk about earthing and the current crisis that we're in. Now, I am not saying earthing specifically helps with COVID-19. Again, if you're listening to this, we are not saying it helps with COVID-19. But I want to talk about some of the science and the systems of the body. It does help. And so maybe we need to start with the lungs and cytokine storms.
Okay. Well, first of all, you have to what happens when you get a virus or a flu or anything else, like a cold? The lungs become congested, and or the respiratory airways. And so what happens is the immune system immediately goes to work trying to capture those viruses. I mean, it's like a game. You have the neutrophils and the macrophages. They're all running around trying to capture these things and reduce them. And some people, get a cold and they just recover rather instantly. Other people, they end up in the hospital. And so what's the difference? When you talk about all of these things like colds and virus, and all of the issues that go with respiration, there's only one thing at play here. It's the strength of the immune system. Because what the immune system does, first of all, it's going to go and it's going to attack the pathogens that are in your lungs from wherever, the viruses or whatever they are. And you breathe pathogens every day, all day long, as long as you're alive. And the immune system is forever in there doing its job 24/7, trying to keep your lungs clean, trying to keep everything clean. A cytokine storm is when all of a sudden the immune system is sitting there doing its job, but as it is doing its job, it's creating, there's not enough redox potential. There's not enough free electrons to reduce the radicals that are produced in this normal immune process. So as these excess radicals, reactive oxygen species, as they begin stealing electrons from other cells, and then all of a sudden it gets out of control, and it's like a brush fire. It's like, it's just a brush fire. And that's what a cytokine storm, that's why they call it a storm. And the cytokines are white blood cells, and they're in there. They're species. They're, electrically charged species, and they're going in there and just oxidizing and burning the lungs up, just like you would burn up a piece of wood or grass in the backyard. It's a firestorm. A cytokine storm is a firestorm. Wow. If you want to put the firestorm out, the first thing you have to do is the body has to get back to a natural, normal, negative state. It needs to be negatively charged, so it has flooded with free electrons, so it has plenty of free electrons that it can automatically reduce those excess radicals and stop the storm. It's like throwing water on a grass fire. That's what you're doing. So it isn't about all of these respiratory health disorders. It's like down in we've donated a lot of stuff, but down in New Orleans, we donated some stuff down there. But basically, the concept was to ground people's lungs. Just take an electrode patch and put one on the top of this lung and the one on the top of this lung over here on the side. And what it does is it's flooding the body with free electron instantly. It's like standing barefoot on the earth, except these people can't go stand barefoot on the earth. And so what it does, within seconds, there's a dampening of the cytokine storm, and then within minutes, respiration, the respiration starts to open up. It's like, this is within minutes. That doesn't mean the damage is healed and all that kind. There's been a lot of damage. There's a lot of healing to go on, but you cannot heal if you have a cytokine storm going on. You have to put out the fire first, and that's what grounding is. This is a nature thing. This is not these grounding devices. They do nothing. They are just an extension cord between you and the earth that electrons can freely flow.
So literally, if we were not feeling well and we laid ourselves down on the earth,
yes,
we would at a minimum be helping our immune system?
That's what it's all about. The immune system operates with radicals, free radicals. It produces free radicals to go and oxidize pathogen. I mean, a neutrophil, for instance, is like a little jelly cell, and it goes and finds these pathogens, and it actually wraps itself around them, and then internally it releases this reactive oxygen. I mean, these radicals, and they destroy it. And then any of them that leak out of that neutrophil, then those are the ones who go and oxidize a healthy cell and create the fire. So if you have negative charge, it's like the red blood cells in the earthing study. When we did the grounded people, before we grounded, we drew blood and took a look at the rouleau formation, the stickiness of the blood, and then grounded them for 30, 40 minutes, and then redrew the blood, and all their blood was all spaced out properly. And what it was, then we measured the electrical surface charge on the blood cells. And so they went from like -5 to -20 millivolts on the average. So now the more negative these cells are, the more they push each other away. And that normalizes blood viscosity. So now the blood can get in and out of the capillaries and oxygenate the tissue. But more importantly, it can donate electrons quickly, because now it's got more electrons to give without damaging the red blood cell. And then and the blood circulates once a minute in your body. So, it's also simple.
So then tell us about, and you mentioned Dr. Stephen Sinatra earlier, a leading cardiologist. Tell us about earthing then, the sticky blood, and blood clotting, which can lead to strokes, heart attacks, and on and on.
Well, I think Stephen would be best to address that or discuss that in detail. But it's like in nature. Do animals have strokes? Do animals have, in the natural world, do they have blood clots? Do they have all these things? I don't think so. Do animals who live indoors with their owners? Yes, they manifest all kinds of issues. These things are all inflammation related on some basis, because you have to have, a blood clot, you have to have blood sticking together. I mean, it has to clump up, stick together, and block off the artery. So there's a shortage of electrons, because what happens is if you don't have enough free electrons with the blood, then the blood starts sticking together. It looks like a little stack of poker chips. And what they're doing is they're sharing electrons so they can stay alive. Then as soon as you have plenty of electrons, then they all automatically equalize with the earth and become negatively charged like the earth itself. If you can imagine like the red blood cells being a whole bunch of little earths running around in your body, it's kind of like that. But anyhow, but that's, when you ground the body, you're really grounding the cells. You're grounding the red blood cells. And so and if you're grounding red blood cells, I guarantee you're grounding every other non-dielectric cell in the body. I mean, so that's why it's easier to get up. It's easier to move, because it's called electrorepulsion. There's more space between your cells, so it's easier to move. You have this electromagnetic force, this repulsion force between the cells. The more negative the body is, the easier it is to move.
And that gets us to, and in fact, I had recently a medical intuitive do a body scan of myself. I've had, from the past with all of my athleticism and stuff, I had broken, well, let's just say, a plethora of bones.
Yes, you have.
In the body. And she did the scan of me and said, I am absolutely amazed. I am dumbfounded. You have no signs of arthritis.
Right.
But I am either barefoot on the earth, or I have a earthing pad beneath my keyboard, or I'll show people later an earthing a sheet or pad on my bed. I'm trying to stay connected to the earth at all times. So maybe you can address things like arthritis or simply pain management.
Well, it's like, first of all, it always goes back to the immune system. The immune system, I think they say it's the largest organ in the body, or because it's all encompassing. I mean, if you have health, health is a byproduct of a healthy immune system. If you have if you're not healthy or you have disorder in your body, then something that you're doing or something in your environment is compromising your immune system to the degree that it cannot maintain health. So what we're saying here is you put shoes on, you disconnect yourself from the earth. Now your immune system is compromised. It can't function like it would normally. So as a byproduct of not being able to function, it can't do what it normally does properly. And so like take, for instance, arthritis. The number one thing that we have seen over the years, and one of the first things I ever learned, was you put a patch on somebody's hand, an arthritic swelling or whatever, and within minutes the pain's gone. But we didn't stop the pain. The pain is a message from the body that there's something wrong. If you have any pain in your body, then there's something wrong. Something you're doing or something is happening around you. So, but anyhow, like arthritis, for instance, arthritis is a cytokine storm. It's a flare, whether it's a lupus flare, MS flare, an arthritic flare, or any other kind of flare. These are similar in nature to a cytokine storm, meaning that you damaged a wrist or something, and the body did not have, in the process, the immune system went over and started cleaning up the damaged cells. And the process didn't have enough free electrons, so now it started damaging adjacent tissue, and so now you have a fire. And so it's called arthritis. Anything that's got an itis on the back end of it, it's an inflammation. It's inflammation. So what we learned in the very early days, and that's what led to all of this work and everything, is you ground anybody that's got arthritic pain and it goes away. So how could it be going away? How can grounding stop arthritic pain or any kind of pain? The first thing that happens, the body becomes negative, and it immediately stops the reactive oxygen species from damaging healthy tissue. Then the body can automatically go back to work and start cleaning up the damage that it created, and then eventually restore its own health, and then it can go back and maintain, the entire health of the body.
You got me thinking. I've done a lot of inline skating again this year, and I went to a really top-end hard boot that has not mated well with my right foot. And I'm doing heat molding to try to get it in order. But my navicular, it's kind of like a mini ankle below it, or that bone, right, that bony protrusion is getting larger and larger. And it just occurred to me during this interview, I am going to take, when I go to sleep at night, my earthing patch, which is then connected to ground or to earth, and I'm going to stick that right on the freaking bone. That plus get a different pair of skates, and I'm going to knock that inflammation down fast.
Okay, yes, absolutely. That's number one. Have you ever seen people, especially a lot of the ladies have, I don't know what the word is, but the big toe has a big growth on it, like a,
it's a bony callus. So you've got the bunion and you've got a bony callus, which is fighting against the shoe. Okay,
so as soon as you start going barefoot, that goes away. Where does it go away? How does it know to go away? It's like you break a bone and they reset the bone. And then all of a sudden you have this big ridge where the bone is broken. And then all of a sudden it goes away. Where did it go? The body is intelligent. The immune system, when I say body, I'm really talking, the immune system, it only knows to do one thing: maintain and return the body to normal, no matter what happens, to clean it up and return the body to normal. So I have seen arthritic hands straighten out. I have seen all of these feet issues straighten out. I have seen absolutely astounding things that cartilage. When I first got involved with grounding, they said, well, cartilage, you can't grow cartilage back. That's crazy. Of course you can. Put a patch on it. And you'll play with the patch here a little bit, but the patch is the most powerful thing. But it isn't the patch. What you're doing is you're creating a connection between you and the earth, and you're pouring the electrons are pouring into your body, but via that spot. And as they come in there, that spot is flooded, and so it's going to put out the fire there. And then the immune system is going to go to work immediately and start restoring and returning that to normal. I mean, your body by and large has been returned to normal.
I'm a miracle. I'm
Exactly.
titanium femurs, titanium hips, broken feet, knees, elbows,
Yeah.
on and on and on it goes. And I'm going to go out after this interview and I'm going to run a small mountain, quite literally.
Right.
But that's the connection to the earth that has allowed me to heal.
Yes. Yeah, keep your body negatively charged. You know, it's just like anytime anybody exercises. The number one thing that happens when you exercise is you create huge inflammation in your body, huge amounts of inflammation in your body, and lots of increase in lactic acid and all that kind of stuff. And 3 days later, you can't even run. I mean, you can't even walk sometimes. But when you ground out after your exercise, just take 5, 10, 15 minutes and sit with your bare feet and your bare hands on the earth, and you won't have that inflammation. You ground it out. You get rid of it, especially before you go to bed.
I want to talk about another kind of, I don't even know if I want to use the term cytokine storm.
Okay.
But there are, particularly during times of crisis, and now there are emotional storms going on. How can earthing help with that?
I'll start out with what causes a lot of the emotional stress. And generally when you have like I have been grounding women and primarily with lupus and MS and a lot of guys with arthritis and a lot of women with arthritis too. But I remember one day I asked a woman who had MS, and it was quite by accident. I said, were you born with MS? No. When did you get MS? About 3 years ago. And this is a woman that I had met, and she was going downhill fairly rapid. And the doctor had told her to go get a big TV set and one of those beds that go up and down. And she says, get comfortable because MS doesn't get any better. And that's kind of the mantra out there, or it was 20 years ago. Because there's not a lot that a rheumatologist can do for these people, except give them steroids and so on. But anyhow, I said, well, what happened in your life that caused you to have MS? She says, I don't know. I don't know what happened. It just came on. And then I was getting some things done. She was in a study, and I was making up the bed and everything for the grounding. And she all of a sudden, she looked at me and she says, she said, that's when I lost my husband. We lost our house. I lost my house afterward. And I went through all of this things and I just never recovered. And then, but anyhow, so I interpolated that meaning that she went into a fight or flight state. And then she stayed in it too long. And then the elevated cortisol ultimately created anxiety, irritability, stress, inflammation. That created more pain. The pain created more. So it ends up in a chronically elevated sympathetic state. And so the immune system is there trying to do everything it can to maintain. But what you have with back up a minute. So she went into a sympathetic state. The sympathetic nervous system, it senses everything in the environment, any threat to the body, whatever, sound, it doesn't matter, feel, touch, everything, emotions, and so on. So, but it's responding like this all the time, 24/7. And your parasympathetic over here, which works primarily with adrenals, it's trying to compensate and dampen that sympathetic response. And as time goes on, if you stay in a sympathetically elevated state for too long, then you exhaust the adrenals. Now the sympathetic pushes further. Now you can start feeling pain and more stress, and it just becomes more out of control. And so then you end up with fire in the body, inflammation. Then it ends up manifesting as MS or lupus or arthritis or 85 other itis type related health disorders. So you go back to these ladies who, and again, I work primarily with autoimmune disease related to MS, all those kind of things. But you go back and visit with these ladies, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what they're suffering from. if you ask them what caused this to manifest in your life, whether it's lupus, MS, or arthritis, or a host of others, and it's always the same. There was a huge loss, or they had, it could be their business went broke, or it could have been, but it's always loss. It's, and so they go into a fight or flight state. They're trying to deal with whatever the loss was. And sometimes it's grieving. Sometimes it's all kinds of situations. Sometimes it's just going to the mailbox and getting a bill, getting up in the morning, getting the kids off, getting a husband off, getting ready yourself and running to work and putting up with the chaos of making a living today. All of these things are stress, and they create emotional stress. So emotion is energy in motion. So it's E. Anything that's got an E, it's electrons. So your electrons are really excited what few you have when you're not grounded. So anyhow, the thing that I have learned is whenever we ground anyone, we can take a half a dozen ladies or 100 at some seminars and ground each and every one of them. You look at them before. They have, their color is off. They're not pink and healthy like the little kids going outdoors and playing. Their demeanor is a little tense, and you can see the anger, the emotional. It's hard to put a single word on it because there's so many things. But as soon, half hour later, first thing that happens, their faces turn pink. That's because the blood viscosity changed, and it went in and it cleaned up all the inflammation and the capillaries in the facial tissue, the skin. And then the rest of the body, normalized. The respiration settled down. They could breathe easier rather than tense. The tension in their body diminished. And then all of a sudden, you see this visceral change. I mean, they start smiling and laughing and playing with each other like little kids. Women do that. But before, they're always sitting there just defense, and whatever. Don't want anybody to know my secret. Don't want anybody to know my problems, whatever. But after they get grounded, that all evaporates and disappears. So it's like what I try to tell people. It's like kids. We talk about grounding kids. When we say we want to ground a child, what we're saying we want him to return to normal. So if you take after work or after you get home or after any kind of an event or stress, you need to take 15, 30 minutes, go outdoors, put your bare feet and your bare hands on the earth, just sit there, take in some sunshine and discharge. I mean, I was able to get athletes to do this on like at the Stanford, I think it was at a running team, their swim team. I mean, here you are swimming in water all day long, but you're practicing, but you're building up all this inflammation in your body, and you are grounding it out. But at the end of the day, when you go home and go to bed, you have all this, tissue damage, and so you have all this inflammation. So we started grounding those gals, and it improved their performance significantly. But the running team, what they did, they started running 15 minutes barefoot around the track before practice, do their practice, then go run 15 minutes afterwards and get the inflammation out of their bodies. So it's about recovery. So, if you store that inflammation, it's just going to, the old saying a long time ago when I was a kid, my granddad would say, I'd say, I had indigestion, and he would always say, he said, it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you, mentally eating you. And so all these life things that accumulate, and they've all gave me an ability to kind of see all this, and then being able to work with all these people over the years, over 20 years. I've grounded. I remember how I grounded you the first time I met you. Same thing. I've grounded so many people. And then they go share it with their people. So we have 1 million people out there grounding each other, and that's what it takes to make this happen, because it's a experiential thing. You have to experience it, and then all of a sudden. But the problem is you can't remember pain 5 minutes after it's gone. So it's a challenge.
It's such a powerful game changer, though. And I want to stay on mental health for a minute, because I'm thinking, how differently we would react as a species, as a culture, as a society, even all of our political differences and everything, if we are grounded and connected to the earth, and our mind has gone out of the mind version of a cytokine storm, how we then get back into this calmer state. And in fact, let's go to the D word here, which is being thrown around economically. It's certainly being thrown around when it comes to emotional health. How can being grounded or connected to the earth help us to what's going to produce in many people right now a depressed state?
Muriel Hemingway works with us a lot, and that's her flag, is helping people with depression.
And that's Ernest Hemingway's granddaughter, correct?
Yes. She's in the movie. She's close. She's a grounding junkie for sure, and she promotes it to everybody. And she even has a magazine called MH Earthing. I think you can find it online. And it's her story along with about 70 stories of 70 other people, their benefits of grounding, But the thing of it is, depression, the word depression means, to depress, to put pressure on, to push it down. So when people get pushed into a corner, financially, emotionally, sometimes you lose your mom, who is your rock, or your father, or you lose a parent, grandparent, or a child, and you get something, you've experienced great loss. And loss, I don't know how to connect the word loss and depression, but you become depressed when you experience loss. And this loss can be in the form of jobs, careers, children, just being on the team. You're third place rather than first place. It's so different for so many different people. But I wish Muriel were talking, and she'll, if you ever want to bring her on, she'll come on anytime you want. But she's great at telling, her story and her father's and family story. And, but her whole life is about helping people understand it and deal with it and giving them some of the tools. And one of the main tools for her is grounding, because it's like when you get grounded, when you are depressed, then, it's your hormones. It's a hormone balance. This is all about hormones. And then you end up getting this anxiety and this irritability and then pain. And that's what creates depression, because it's a battle. You just you don't feel like you can crawl out of this hole, or the world isn't fair to you, or this, or heaven only knows what it is. But when you get grounded, you have to realize that when you touch the earth, you are electrically connected to the earth. You are one and the same as the earth electrically. You are as big as the earth electrically. Not only that, every fish in the ocean, every leaf on a tree, every animal that's sitting on the earth, no matter, and all the flora and all of the bacteria, everything, it's all energy, it's all alive, and we're all here together, and we're all singing this tune. But when you connect to that, you have these frequencies that are really regulating hormones and certain things. But there's something else that's happening. You become one with all other life on the planet, and there's an evener, I guess. There's a force. There is this. I don't know. It's like. I don't want to get into religion or anything, but
you can go there on our show, and the term that's coming to mind is you're coming home.
Yes, yeah. We are going home. I mean, when we go back into nature, when we step back into nature, nature is our home. Nature is who we are, and we are a piece and a part of it. We're not separate above it or anything else. We are a piece and a part of it, and it's all one harmonious event. It's the rhythms of nature, the patterns of nature. We need to live within those patterns because they work. When we step out of line with nature, then there's a price to pay, because your body catches on fire. And the emotions, what happens is when you ground the body, there's other things that happen here. One is it dampens the noise in your body. And that's an electrical term that we use in the communications industry. But sometimes if there's noise on the line, we have to ground it to dampen the noise, suppress the noise. And so the more electrons there are, the more negative charge, the less charge there is. And by reducing the charge, that's dampening the noise. But in your body is very noisy. I mean, you have all this traffic, all the nerves going on. If you were to take a stethoscope and just listen to your nerves, I mean, or pick a mic, a pickup, and put it on the body and just flex a muscle and listen to all that noise. I mean, it's outrageous the amount of noise that's going on in the body. But as soon as you're grounded, it reduces it by 50% instantly. So what happens is you quiet the noise, you lower the noise in the body. And so the nervous system, you reduce the activity of the nervous system, the stress response things, you reduce everything. You bring it back down to normal. You quiet the nervous system. You quiet everything. And then all of a sudden, it's like it drains, it's like pain and inflammation and anxiety, irritability, and depression drain from the body. How can you be depressed if you go out in the woods, sit there on a rock, and with a little sunshine on your toes? It's not possible. You just have to step out of your environment, the box that we all lock ourselves into. You have to step out of that box. And maybe you can't leave the box completely, but you have to find ways to escape the box long enough to recover. And sometimes that's at lunch, sometimes it's after work, sometimes it's after dinner, after exercise, whatever. But you have to find that space where you can tune back into nature and that force, that living force that resides throughout nature and throughout us, that brings us back into sync with everything else, the synchronicity of life and the balance of life.
Very good. And I want to talk in a minute about some products that you can use to help you ground when you're at home. With that said, I want to address a tiny elephant in the room. If you go online and you start Googling grounding, earthing, at some point you hit upon either something called dirty electricity, or people who say that the environment is too noisy electrically, that you don't want to be grounded here. Is this true, or what can you tell us about this?
Well, first of all, you have to realize that the Earth is infinitely large. The body is infinitely small, and these little electric fields are infinitely small relative to the Earth. So the safest thing you can do is to connect to the Earth, because we're talking about inflammation. These people that are talking about dirty electricity and EMFs, it all started 20 years ago or longer when a lady had a son who had leukemia, and she in Denver, and she went outdoors and stared up at a telephone pole, saw a transformer, and then she started finding other people who had leukemia, and then they looked at the poles around their house, and they had transformers. Well, almost all houses have transformers. That's how you get the step down to get into the, bring the electricity, stepped it down so you can, run the power in the house. So anyhow, this was all, and then so the NIH and everybody, everybody started getting on this bandwagon, so these EMFs cause cancer. I can assure you EMF doesn't cause cancer. What causes cancer is a compromised immune system. And you can't compromise an immune system if it's grounded. But anyhow, I have put up with these people for 20 years. I don't want to say anything. I mean, these people have a legitimate service and a legitimate role to play. Why they came at odds with me is very, very simple. One of them up in Canada or somewhere wrote me a letter one day and said, that I was nuts. I was out of my mind. You couldn't do all these things and whatever. And then then I started meeting with some of these EMF groups, like down in San Diego, and they invited me to come to one of their events. So I did. And I was talking away, and I said, well, I'm from the communications industry. If we want to prevent EMI, electromagnetic interference, and that's what we're all talking about here, then we ground them. I mean, that's why you ground the chassis of a computer or an amplifier or a receiver or all these kind of things, and so you don't have to go do all these things. You don't have to charge people $2,000, $25,000 to go in and do all these things. Most people can't afford it. You're wasting your time. And I said the easiest thing for most people to do if their health is compromised is to get grounded, or to get outdoors and spend more time outdoors, or start unplugging their electrical devices in their home. And if they're really concerned about cell phones and all this kind of thing, then turn the damn thing off. Because the biggest problem with cell phones is not the tower, it's the one in your pocket. So I go round and round with them. I don't want to take them on, but if you can reduce electric fields in your home, do it. But to say, go out and tell somebody, don't earth because of this, that's marketing BS. And they refuse to sit down with us and test. And we've even offered to go hire, PEs from the universities, whatever, and come in and demonstrate and, validate their claims. They can't validate them. It's nonsense. It's like electrons. Don't leave the house. The electrons in your wiring in your home are the same electrons that were there the day they put the wire in. And there's no electrons coming from the grid to your house. You have a step-down you have a transformer. Mm-hmm. It's got a big coil and a little coil. They do not touch each other, but the electric field from this coil is, when you make a smaller coil, then it can't create as much electricity. So that brings it down to whatever amount of service that you need in the home. But there's nothing there except an electric field. So then, and then you have fuses and all this stuff. But the only thing that happens with the electrons in your home is they're excited. Every time you open up a circuit, then they're sitting there wiggling back and forth 60 times a second. They're not going anywhere. So there's a lot more to it than people realize.
I've got a few toys here I want to go over, and then I want to talk real briefly about kids. Then I'm going to let you go. We could keep going and going. I love geeking out on this. Yeah. First off, I've got a patch kit here. Yes. This right here. And I had put this to the side. Now, I must say, I'm on a grounding mat. We'll show you that in a minute. I sleep grounded at night. I do spend time barefoot, but I don't think that unless you're spending 24 hours a day, you're still building up that charge. You're still disconnected. Yeah. You're swimming in this sea of EMF. But yep. What are these patches? And you talked about it earlier. We're plugging it in to our electrical outlet, or we're plugging it into the earth directly with a stake. What are we doing?
Well, there's a little adapter that goes with that. You plug it into an outlet, and then you can plug in up to 2 wires. And then these are for people who had arthritis, lupus, MS. I can take a woman who has MS. Her hand, it is like this, and it's moving all over the place, and she can't control it unless she holds it. And I can put a patch on her hand, and I guarantee you 30 minutes, she can control it. The pain is gone. Color is back. Her life has changed. And I can honestly say to her, within a minute, they said, as soon as I put this patch on you, your MS is going to vanish. Now, the damage that has been done is going to go on, and it's going to take the immune system a long time for that to heal up, but it will never heal up unless you stay grounded. So, but as soon as you get grounded, and the reason I can say that is because it's usually with MS, it's neutrophils or whatever. There was an issue from something, and so you had a damaged cell, like on the myelin sheath. And so the immune system or the neutrophil went in there and oxidized it, tried to clean it up, and in the process, it started creating inflammation and started eating up the myelin sheath, oxidizing. And so the nerve was exposed, and that's what MS is. So as soon as I put a patch on her hand, then it's like taking a fire hose and putting it on a fire. So as soon as I do that, now the body is flooded with free electrons. It's going to shut down that neutrophils from eating up and oxidizing the myelin sheath. And then the pain will come down, circulation will, and then all of a sudden they'll start feeling better. The problem was with most of them, as soon as they start feeling better, they unplug and want to go dancing. And it takes a long time to recover. But anyhow, so the patches are primarily for if you had a tooth pulled, and you don't want to take Vicodin, you can't have Vicodin pain when you're grounded. The Vicodin pain is the oxidation.
Yep.
The oxidative portion doesn't happen because you got negative charge, and so the radicals are automatically neutralized, so they're not oxidizing and burning up tissue. So just get grounded, and it'll put the fire out. So whether it's surgery, plastic surgery, it doesn't matter what it is. But flaring arthritis is what I really designed them for in the beginning. Lupus, MS, arthritis, or anybody who had an itis or a flaring type health disorder. But they also work for any kind of an injury or an acute injury. Sprain an ankle, put a patch on it. Don't put ice on it. The ice will do more damage. Big study out on that. Nobody's even learned about it yet.
Yes.
But put a patch on it, because that's going to flood the area, the damage, and the oxidative burst is that we all talk about, and everybody was taught, is what all too often we relate it to inflammation. It's not about inflammation. And the oxidative burst is when the neutrophil comes over and encapsulates the damaged cell and releases reactive oxygen. That's an oxidative burst. Now, when that burst isn't dampened and it starts damaging other things, then the continued oxidation that has occurred by the immune system, the neutrophils trying to clean up the neutrophils, the damage. You can't put out a fire. They can't put out a fire if you're blowing on the fire and not putting any water on it. So anyhow, that's what the patches are for. But now one thing we learned is, one time when we were doing one of our studies, the landlord was an older gentleman. He had just had some kind of cardiovascular issues, and he had horrible COPD. And so we were setting up the lab and everything so we could do the research. And so I said, sit down in the chair, and I just sat him down there, and I put a patch in each hand. Normally I would have put it here for COPD.
On his chest, yeah.
But I just put it on the hands because it's kind of the same thing. By the way, your feet and your hands are the most conductive part of your body. They are your ground paws.
I like it.
And so anyhow, all of a sudden, he started turning pink, and he started feeling a little better. But most important, he says, I don't know what the hell you're doing to me, but I can breathe. And so within just 5 minutes, we put out the cytokine storm, the chronic cytokine storm from compulsive, whatever it is, pulmonary disease. And so we just dampened it within minutes. And then a couple of days later, his nurse called and says, what did you do to this guy? Because we gave him up. We didn't think he was going to live much longer. Oh. But he said he's out there like a kid now. And he's got these patches. What are they? How do they work? And I told him, I said, now from now on, you sleep with those at night. You put them on your chest. And you sleep with those every night. And it takes 5 years for your lungs to recover 100%. But I guarantee you in 5 years, your lungs will recover. And they did.
Woohoo! We'll talk about a few others, a few more quickly here. I never am at my computer without a grounding mat or pad underneath my keyboard. So if I'm going to be surrounded by electronics, I'm still outside connected to the earth.
Yes. Yeah, always remember that when you are connected to the earth, if there's an electric field in the environment, then that electric field is, once you're grounded, then you can't make it go away, but what it will do is it will bounce off of you.
Like a Faraday cage.
Yes. The skin serves as a Faraday cage. The body becomes totally negatively charged, so you have this natural Faraday cage. So what that pad does is you can put it on your desk. I have one on my desk that I put my computer on, and I use it for a mouse pad because my hands are always...
Yep, me too.
Wrists are always on it. I have a saltillo tile, Mexican tile floor, so I don't need it on the floor. But when I am in an air environment at the office, I will put it on the floor underneath and put my feet on it. And so what that does, it just keeps your body negative. You're going to feel at the end of the day better, as good as you felt it at the beginning of the day when you're grounded all day long. I mean, you don't lose your energy. You don't have burnout. And and then when we developed that product was really a byproduct of one of our research studies. One of the first research studies, I took a pad, made it 2 feet long, 1 foot wide, and it was felt, and then I bonded a piece of conductive material to it, connected an alligator or snap to it, and then grounded it. Put it under the sheet and told them to go to bed. And that's how we did our studies. Our first study was done with that little mat slept underneath the sheet. And that product, as time went on, everybody that was in the studies or the researchers, they all wanted them. And so we began making up some out of the excess materials. Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of a product that it's an accidental product. Right. And we've sold over 1 million of those. And I don't know how many for sure, but what it is, in the beginning, it was very inexpensive, still is, but it's a poor man's bed pad, is what we called it, because everybody didn't take a small amount of money. Yeah. You could take it to work with you, you could travel with it, you could sleep on it, you could sit on it, you could, whatever. So it was a universal earthing mat, and but it's really a nice product.
Thank you. And I want to talk about what we can sleep on, but there's another purpose that I've had for these, which is it becomes a sleeping pad for our pets who were meant to be connected to the earth as well. Yeah.
Yeah, cats and dogs automatically migrate to those if you lay them on the floor. In fact, I'll tell you, in one of the schools we were working with, mm-hmm. Where we had the autistic children and the special needs children. In one of them, we just took a couple of those mats and a couple of yoga mats, and we couldn't use them per se. All we did is put them in the room. And normally these kids, when they have meltdowns and everything, they want to go outdoors or they want to go hide in the bushes or something. And so ultimately what ended up happening is when these kids would start to melt down, mm-hmm. they would run to that yoga mat and lay on it. Just like a cat or a dog would go and dig a hole and put their belly in the earth, And then as soon as they felt better, then they would come back. And some of this is in the movie, I think, when they talk about that.
It makes me think that we need in every house a grounding station. Where if you're not connected, if you start to lose it, you go lay down over there.
Yeah. Either get outdoors and put your bare feet on the earth, take a chair, whatever you need. Yeah. Otherwise, sit down. If you're going to watch TV, get a grounding mat, put it on the floor or put it on the chair and sit on it. It's life-changing. You can't afford not to do this.
Awesome. I'll go over one or two more, and we have the link. If you're listening to this, come on over to our website. We've got the link where you can find this stuff, or on YouTube, we've got it right below the show here. Last two, I've got to find a way to wrap this up. But the reason I'm holding this stuff is I'm using it on a daily basis. I'm either using a sheet here, or I'm using this, which goes across the whole bed. What am I looking at here?
Yeah, well, the big one that you have there, that's a huge ground plane. Basically, you put it over your mattress. Yep. And connect it, and it's got bands that hold it in place, and it's made of carbon, and so it's going to last forever. Yep. Where the sheets and everything, they're nice, but they won't last as long. But these will last forever, and it's a huge ground plane. So you put it on your mattress, plug it in, put your sheet over the top of it, lay down, go to sleep. And so you're sleeping on a ground plane. You're sleeping in the Earth's electric field. You're resonating. You're singing with the Earth. And if you have any inflammation, it's being drained away.
And you sleep a heck of a lot better.
Yeah. Yeah, sleep you're going to have more profound sleep. But that product is our best product. We have one more refined version coming out next year sometime, but that is the best product that we have produced to date. It's taken us over 20 years to put together a family of simple products that people could sleep on. Putting metal in the bed, putting carbon is a metal, but putting conductive in the bed and not having it destroyed either by perspiration or laundry or you name it. It's been a challenge.
Couple last things and I'll let you go. You were mentioning autism and kids with challenges, and I imagine ADD and things would come into this. What have you been finding with kids?
Well, it's all one thing. It's basically these kids, they get up in the morning, if they haven't slept with their shoes, first thing they do is put their shoes on. Their sports athletic shoes. Yeah. And then that's the status symbol for all too many of them. But anyhow, so these kids, then you have carpets in the home, or you have carpets in schools, or you have insulative material on the floors in schools. And then when they practice, they're wearing rubber sole shoes, so they are never, ever grounded. So these kids are building up all this inflammation in their bodies. It's like autism. Anybody can believe anything they want. They can say anything they want and whatever. But autism is from a cytokine storm. You inoculate these kids with 20, 30 shots, whatever. And so here's the immune system trying to adapt to all of that and to deal with all of that. And so you end up, if you're not grounded, you end up with a cytokine storm, and that's what sets off this fire in the brain that sets up and predisposes them for these other health disorders. I probably shouldn't have said it that way, but I am kind of aggressive about that one because it's important. What happens when a child develops, autism, ADD, any of these things? The parents go to jail from now on. Their life, they no longer have a normal life. Their time is consumed taking care of this child. Their finances are drained by all of the craziness that's out there, and so it's a real challenge. So it's really, really important, especially if you're going to do anything, ground these kids immediately after they do exercise, after they get shots, after they do anything. But anyhow, so ADD, ADHD, all of these things, basically, especially boys, and they're predominantly boys, they're more active. They create more inflammation in their bodies, and then they go to bed and they don't ground any of it out. Like the rabbit, you've got to ground it out. So, but ADD is, I used to call it's tennis-shoeitis. It's not ADD. It's not ADHD. Let's get real here. These kids are not grounded. So their bodies are full of fire. They're on fire. And then their nervous systems are like this because of all the tension and stress that's going on. And then the anger. So let's give them whatever all those drugs are they give them, Ritalin and everything else.
Well, I used to be on the work, so I was the poster child. I wrote a book on it. So I was Ritalin, I was Adderall, I was Wellbutrin, I was you go. And then I got out to nature. And I didn't even know what was happening, but all of a sudden, it all quieted down.
Yeah, it's a nature deficit disorder. It's a grounding deficit. Yeah.
Any last words of wisdom you want to share? And actually, I'm going to bring up one more thing. I don't even know where to go with it. And I wonder what she's doing because I haven't spoken to her about it, but I do have a sister. I have one sibling, a sister, and she struggles with lupus.
Okay. Well, lupus is an inflammation-related health disorder. Mm-hmm. She wasn't born with it. It's an environmental, modern, stress-related health disorder. So it's a flaring cytokine storm type health disorder. So what she has to do, first of all, she has to get grounded, stay grounded as much as possible. And especially if a flare is coming on, you put a patch on, and you do not take a patch off until the flaring comes down. Otherwise, your option is steroids, which she knows, and you don't want that. So just put patches on, sleep with them, take a shower with them, whatever. Just stay grounded. And then when she's not having flares, then she just needs to get more grounded. But there is another issue here. She needs to think differently. She needs to get grounded mentally. And I hope this didn't get me in trouble because she can come beat me up. But
I love her dearly. She's pretty open-minded, so I think you're safe.
Okay. But basically, there's something.
Where do you live? I'll make sure I don't tell her.
Okay. But there's something eating at her. There is something feeding the inflammation in her body. she's not grounded, so it may not be putting out the fire of inflammation, but there's something feeding the inflammation, and it has to do with living in a chronically elevated sympathetic state. So she's angry or mad or sad or something about something that happened, and it's internalized. I can get in a lot of trouble. I'm not a doc, so please, people know that. I just
and you don't play one on TV. You're an electrician of the body.
No, I'm an observer. I have observed hundreds and thousands of people, and there are patterns, and they tell you their stories. They tell you every person, if you just listen, they will talk to you and tell you what's making them sad and mad and angry. And they need to vent it. They need to get it out. They need to ground it out. They need to be able to let go of things. Walk away from the things, start eliminating things and letting go of things that are stressing you until one day morning you wake up and you feel great. You bounce out of bed, sunshine, and then go rebuild your life, rebuild your house, rebuild your business, do whatever, but get your health back in, reconnect with nature. Health is free. If you do not have health, I'll say it this way, lupus, if you have lupus, then something in your environment, something you are doing, or something in your environment is compromising your immune system to the point that it can't maintain health. Lupus is a byproduct of that.
Thank you. And what you are not saying, which is fascinating today, is that an autoimmune disorder, I hate labeling everything, so putting that in quotes, because to label somebody is to lock them in a box. You're not saying it is the body turning on itself. You are saying we don't have the means to be able to clean this out after the immune system has done exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, the immune system is just doing what it's supposed to be doing, but it's accidentally creating a fire. And then while trying to put the fire out, it keeps feeding the fire. Yeah. It's really simple. There's the only health. It's like in 204 when Ritger and the boys came out with Boston, Mass. They said you don't have cancer, you don't have all these health disorders. What you have is chronic inflammation, and it manifests differently in different people based on your lifestyle and your genetics.
Thank you, which means I'm going to be sending a patch kit to my father-in-law who is about to have some sort of radiation therapy for cancer. Oh. I'm going to be getting this to him yesterday. I'm going to look for the postal service which says deliver yesterday, Clint.
Yeah, because radiation creates a lot of inflammation. And you've got to, once the radiation's done, it's done. Mm-hmm. So now you've got to clean up all of that inflammation. So getting them grounded, if it's nothing more than putting your feet and hands on the bare earth for 30 minutes at a time, several times a day, to keep that fire, to keep that heat out of the body, then he can recover much faster. Then the immune system can go back to work on the cancer.
Have you ever put it on people's guts for people who are having irritable bowel or anything of that sort?
Yeah, one of the number one things is bloating and gastrointestinal disorders. Yeah, that's all. I mean, if you have gastrointestinal disorders, you're suffering from a chronically elevated sympathetic state because you're in this fight or flight state, and the first thing that happens is the body shuts down digestion to save energy, so you have enough energy to run or fight. Get rid of the coyote. You got to get rid of these coyotes in your mind. If you want to control inflammation, you have to look at things mentally also, because there's a coyote and you're responding to a coyote. And the coyote's right there all the time. You need to put the coyote at bay.
We had an audience member asking specifically about grounding or earthing and meditation, or it could even be earthing, HRV, heart rate variability, and meditation. Have you looked into any of this?
Oh yes, we've done a lot of work on HRV. In fact, the baby study, the preemie study, where we had the preemie babies back at it was done in Hershey, Pennsylvania, at the Children's Clinic. Yeah. By University of researchers at the University of Pittsburgh or Pennsylvania, and they had like 28 preemies. Mm-hmm. These are babies 6 weeks early or something like that, and they put them in incubators. And so the biggest problem they have with them, and there's a study on this on the earthinginstitute.net. So the biggest problem they have is these babies develop all the colics because they're isolated from their their mothers, and they're just electrified in these incubators. So they put a patch on them, just like you put on your hand there. And within like just a few minutes, their vagal tone normalized, their heart rate variability increased 70%, and so they returned to normal in just a matter of minutes. So vagal tone and heart rate variability, they're one and the same. It's like the sympathetic, parasympathetic. It's your heart being able to respond to whatever's going on, stress, and so on. Vagal tone is the tone of your muscles, the tone of your nervous system, balance. And so that study, you might want to make reference to it. It's in the movie also. Grounding normalizes vagal tone, normalizes heart rate variability. It's nature. This is not earthing. I mean, this isn't a treatment. This is our normal state. Being ungrounded is not normal. And so, it's like people say, how much time should I be grounded? When your pain comes back, it's a sure sign you need to get grounded.
Awesome. So I'm going to think about that when it comes to meditation. You've also got me thinking now, because I'm plugged into the computer. I'm plugged in when I sleep. I'm plugged in when I'm outside playing. I'm not plugged in unless it's summertime, where I'm going to sit on the grass when I eat, and I'm going to put a mat where I sit down to eat and see if that improves digestion as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because indigestion is inflammation. And I get a kick out of it. I work with, Deepak Chopra and a few others, but occasionally a lot of these yogis and other people show up related to him and so on, and we talk about barefoot and grounding, and they said, well, of course, I mean, it's in India and places like that, everybody is barefoot, or most of them are, and they sleep in the earth, and but meditation, they're on the earth, and they may be on a wool blanket, but the blanket is on the earth, and the blanket is mineral. I mean, wool has mineral in it, and moisture. So we just accidentally invented plastics and accidentally disconnected from the earth. We did not know that our immune system was regulated or maintained. The electrical stability of our immune system is maintained by being grounded.
Last thing that I have, driving in an RV, how during that time, I've literally thought of having dragging little metal things going behind the car, which just sounds awful. I don't imagine that'd be very healthy. How do you ground during that?
We used to have an auto seat pad, and I know that they just reordered them, and they're going to put them back on the site. I'll send you one when we get one, or you can just take a universal mat, like you have there, and you can put it in the seat, so you're sitting on it, and one for Jessica also. And then take you have to clamp it somehow, the plug, or somehow or another you have to connect it to the metal frame.
Okay.
Under your seat. So
basically you're connecting to the ground of the vehicle, to the ground of the battery.
Yeah, the entire metal of the vehicle of the frame of the chassis is grounded to the negative side of the battery. So it's got plenty of excess free electrons. So when you sit on it, you're not grounded to the earth, but you are grounded, and you're not going to have any static electricity on your body. And that's what you have to worry about. When you're driving down the road, what happens is the bottom of the seat has springs in it. And so you're bouncing you're bouncing back, and so your back is stationary, and so you're turbocharging. So you're creating all the static electricity on the body. And so when you get grounded to the chassis, then your body's negative like the chassis, that you can't have static electricity when you're grounded.
I love it, because I think of the health of truckers or like police or anybody who's in their vehicle all the time, and I can't help but think that they're in the field. I hadn't thought of that. I had thought of the radial biased tires of generating, but you're saying it's the going up and down on that seat.
Yeah, it's turbocharging.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a static electricity. Yeah, and it affects their lungs and their respiration too.
Any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today, Clint? This has been phenomenal.
Get these kids grounded and keep them grounded, because we need a generation of healthy kids, and we've got to get on that, stay on it.
Woohoo! Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I've got the links below. I've got the links on the website. I can't recommend enough. I mean, I wrote the book Barefoot Running and Barefoot Walking. I'm very biased about this. That was my way to return to health.
Absolutely. No, it's all good. It's all good. So
thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste. Blessings. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get plugged back into the earth, and get rid of that coyote, poor coyote, today, and shine bright. Woohoo!
All right. Take care. That's awesome.
Thank you so much, Clint.
Well, that was a good one. Yes.
That was a fantastic one. If you're watching this, then you are a light worker. You're a light warrior, and I want to help. We offer everything from boot camps, mini masterclasses, full-on masterminds, and private one-on-one coaching with me. To find out more about our upcoming courses, simply visit InspireNationUniversity.com or click on the links below. And to find out more about coaching, simply visit InspireNationUniversity.com/coaching. We also have weekly YouTube live events with me where you can ask me your questions live, and YouTube premieres featuring me and our guests. Simply subscribe below and click on the bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows. I just had the most fantastic grounding, earthing, connect with Mother Earth, discharge those electrons, or fill up with those free electrons interview with Clint Ober, the father of earthing. To check out more incredible, healthful interviews, click here, subscribe below, click on that bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows, YouTube premieres, and live events with me every Sunday night. Be sure to click on the link below to find out more about earthing products, the other link on our boot camps, and our upcoming classes. Thumbs up if you enjoy this. Leave your comments. Love you guys so much. Shine bright.